brief introduction of our honorable guest. First, we will felicitate our guest. Tanvi madam.
Very warm welcome to all of you. It's a very happiest moment for me because I was searching for architect Ravi Patwardhan for a long 2-3 years, that I wanted a person like him to come to this college and give his experience where he has worked tremendously on the methodology of design, the process of design, the studio approach, and n number of things. My words will be very less in front of him. On behalf of Pimpri-Chinchwad Education Trust and SB Patil College of Architecture and Design, I welcome him. It's my great honor to have him here with us today. A small introduction of him is having his TF Cube Design Studio firm as he's a partner there. He has been graduated from VNIT Nagpur and has completed Masters in Urban Design from SPA New Delhi. He is currently appointed as Professor at Designing Chair, Head at College of Architecture. Architect Ravi sir is an expert in built environment analysis, formulation of eco-housing, certification norms, and climate responsive architecture. He also has a past professional experience in urban design, eco-housing, community planning, hospital, commercial and industrial design. He has presented his work in various conferences and seminars. He is also an author of a book, Article Vision 2016, published Times of India, Pune, and has published essay on concerns in high-rise buildings. TF Cube Design Studio under his guidance was shortlisted for UNDP sponsored consultancy services to assist the climate change adaptation in the planning and design of buildings in Mauritius by Government of Mauritius. Architect Ravi Patwardhan sir was keenly involved in forming assessment system for architecture design and thesis. He has conducted multiple workshops on rethinking of architectural pedagogy studio with an aim to have an integrated approach to design across all years of architectural BRH course. So he's a gem of a person. I think you should not miss any of his points today. It's going to help you because being architects, architecture design हा आपल्या पूर्णत्वाचा आत्मा आहे, तो त्यांनी सगळ्यांनी हे फॉलो करावं. Without any further delay, I invite architect Ravi Patwardhan sir to enlighten our students and faculties and visiting faculties on architectural design pedagogy system. So it's my real honor to have you here, and it would be a great moment for us to listen to you and learn a lot of things from you. Thank you, sir. Please welcome.
Good morning, everyone. At the outset, I start with Okay.
समोर केलं चालेल
हो चल.
म्हणजे सगळ्यांना ऐकू शकतो.
Yeah. Okay. Today's presentation, I'll start with my humble Yeah, my humble tribute to my dear friend, whom we all lost last fortnight. He was one of key persons who egged on for developing this particular pedagogic systems. Then due credits to students and faculty of BNCA, as well as students and faculty of MMCOA, who have actively participated, indulged me in various tasks that were brought up, and in realizing and bringing forth this particular pedagogic systems. And of course, our group, which is called as Oceans 9 Ensemble, who kept on adding, giving critical comments and suggestions, which developed into this pedagogy system. Sunil was also a very active member of this think tank. And lastly, I would like to thank Patil College of Architecture and Design for giving me this opportunity to share with you what has been developed so far, and further I would look forward to participation from you all, students as well as faculty, so that it can be further refined. Refinement is the key word. More you refine, design is actually, that is the development of design. That is all about design. Various systems that have been developed so far, which some of them we are going to see, are manuals of reference, design methodology, settlement study structure, because first, second, third year have settlement study within their curriculum. So how that can become part of design studio. Then scholastic framing, design assignment briefs, how briefs are to be taken, what all it should contain. Then theme of the year within the design studio, lateral integration, evaluation systems, assessment systems, feedback systems, studio administration, because that again is an important aspect, because students finally work as per how the administration studio is administered. Then overall, combining all of these together as a design studio policy, working towards integration of all 5 years, as well as all that they learn and they should learn towards a professional. So understanding design methodology as a process of statement of intent through selective choices. A little bit of background. When I started teaching in 2007 as a visiting faculty, typically design studio would commence with having a chat among the design faculty, and one of the faculty would say that this year we'll start with some brief. Brief would be written down on the blackboard, and students would take it down, and later on blackboard is erased and the brief is gone, and whosoever has that brief would even the faculty would not know what the actual brief was. Similarly, when the weekly reviews or weekly studios were conducted, many of students were clueless, as well as unfortunately the faculty was also clueless as to what was to be done. And it was like students got some work, then we used to react. It was more of a reactive kind of studio. And typical comments, कुछ काम करते नहीं है, काम करो तभी हम लोग faculty can react. काम कैसे करेंगे? Explore करो. That word explore was something that sparked off this thinking, because that explore reminded me of a ragging incident wherein in our college we were sent into a dark room, blindfolded, and asked to find a black, blind, dumb, deaf cat. And later on we realized that cat was not there. Okay, so explore करेंगे तो कैसे करेंगे, क्या करेंगे, directionless. So that is when we got together, and a informal kind of think tank started emerging, and we started having discussions as to how a design studio needs to be conducted, and a background of various models were studied, researched upon, and myself having that keen interest in reading and understanding, I took up that task among the think tank, and others started pouring in with their suggestions and comments. So some of the, before we look at those models, we started understanding what the design term means. We use it along with a number of other fields of or disciplines like fashion design or machine design, and even survey form that is used for various questionnaire is also a design, survey design. So it could be, design could be anything where we have multiple choices and the user makes the choices. The moment choice making process is involved, that is a design process is there. So it is a, the term design indicates the process of making choice in the salient features among various options in the development of final product configuration. So be it be a garment, or it could be a machine, it could be car, it could be even household appliance, anything that has number of variables, variations, parameters, and either a user starts making the choices, or on behalf of user, some expert. Like in architecture, it is architects who makes those choices. So the choice is made by the user or designer who is representing the user. A design product, besides performing its function, gives the user the sheer joy. So unless that joy is there, we cannot call it as a design process. It is just a efficient way of working. We are choosing the efficiency, not the joy part is missing. So design as a term is loosely used as a noun also, as well as a verb also. In academic, especially in architectural field, design is verb. It's not a product, but a process. So it is a process to synthesize multiple stimuli. Where does these multiple stimuli come from? They come from economy, performance, and visual. And while choosing various options that are available, we employ a faculty of reason that has been gifted to us human being by using these logics, logic for performance, rationale for economy, and aesthetic for visual aspects. So when it is a process, then it has to have a start and as well as an end. So where does it start? So these were the questions that we started asking ourselves. When does a design process start? What marks the start of that entire process? And what is the last? When does it end? And how do we begin? These were the questions that we asked ourselves. And we started looking at distinctions between product and process. Drawing parallels from thermodynamics or from physical other aspects, even mathematics also. For instance, we have these linear equations wherein 3x is equal to 15. Any student would say it is 5, whatever. It's a simple solutions. Similarly, when we have two variables, 4x plus 3y is equal to somebody might say that 4 and it's 4 plus 3 as the answers. A possibility is there, that could be the answer. It could also be 1 and 7 also. So unless we have two equations where two variables are involved, two equations are necessary to get appropriate answer. Similarly, progressive complexity of n, I think I jumped on. Yeah. If there are n variables involved, n number of equations are required. Adding further complexity, if some of those variables have exponential equations, then like quadratic has got two answers. Number of exponential will create number of that many number of various equations. So imagine a design methodology as a process that has got n variables, of which some are exponentials of p. So the process of design starts with identifying those n number of equations to find p number of solutions. That is when, if we are able to identify those equations, then we will be in a position to come out with different answers that are possible. That's a parallel drawn between mathematics and design. So the pre-design module, the methodology, assists you in forming these equations. What equations are there, what variables are there, that will be identified through these pre-design modules. Sequence of modules is not relevant, just as the substitution of variable isn't. So in simultaneous equation, we either make x is equal to and bring everything in terms of y, or substitute x values into other equation. So it doesn't matter which of them is substituted, so long as all the variables are brought to one single aspect. Similarly, the pre-design module, which one to take first, it doesn't matter so long as we address all the variables and then take a look at them together at par. So at times the shortcuts taken without the equations lead to what is known as backtracking. So with single simultaneous equation, if answer is found, it is a backtracking because it hasn't followed that due mathematical process. We find the same thing in design also. The solution might fulfill all the requirement, but if it hasn't followed due design process, then it is backtracking. It might work, but it may not be. It is very dangerous also. When does the design process end? On achievement of intent at 3 levels: at tangible level, at image level, and at visionary level. So what do we mean by tangible level? The tangible level we can ascertain easily in terms of efficiency of performance, whether it is activity functional or in terms of operations, that is running of performance of the built environment itself. And at image level, community performance with respect to socio-cultural aspects and arts and contribution to arts and crafts. At visionary level, what contribution we can make to space and time. And evolving styles is one of such examples where visionary levels can be ascertained. Here, academically, it cannot be trained as a system, but it can be exposed. That is the limitation in academics. It might, some of you might be very gifted children who might reach that visionary level, but that effort to reach that level can be induced through faculty. So what does design methodology do is to help you explore and ascend to higher levels of appropriate solutions through its cyclical, iterative nature. Some models that were pre-existing when we started looking for such models, we came across number of such models that were already existing. The oldest model, Vitruvian principle, or it is called as Vitruvian triad also, which is balance of Venustas, Formitas and Utilitas. Probably it is the first theory children learn as soon as they take admission into architecture. So that's the first model that we looked into. And then, of course, Gropius school of thought, Bauhaus, wherein a multidisciplinary, multidimensional approach towards design had been proposed. Then this was very interesting, which was most apt for academic environment. Basic, that is brief, analysis, synthesis, implementation and communication. And it was a linear process. That's the reason why it was very suitable for academic environments, wherein children could learn from studio to studio in a linear fashion. And this was the first model which we adopted, experimented in 2008-9 onwards up to 2013. And then we revised it further, and final model we came across, which we'll see shortly. Then other models were exploratory, whereas design process is choosing the best solutions out of several divisions of design solutions. Make explorations, keep on doing it until you like one of those options and realize it is the best possible solution. So that was also a model that we came across. Then there was another model which was a centralized process. This is actually can be seen in practice, in profession. Most architects work with this particular model, wherein all the processes become centralized, work together. However, we found it unsuitable in an academic environment because students are still learning various subjects across, and parallelly this requires lateral integration, lateral thinking. So lateral thinking is also something that students are trying to acquire through their working. So this was kept as part of one of the tasks we looked into, because finally when they establish their practice, they might adopt to this particular model. Then there was another model which was cyclical and iterative, going through various steps, having a question at the end of the stage, whether that is a test, whether this fulfills the requirements or not. If it doesn't, then redo, go back, again start in a cyclical process, and until you reach and reach to a level wherein you can say that we are satisfactory. Then there was the investigative model, wherein every step you investigate what number of options that are available, and out of those options, you choose one and create more options out of that and keep creating options in a linear fashion. So this was again an investigative model. Then I'm sorry because the little fragmentation is there, different thoughts. I am putting them and stopping them, and I am trying to link all these thoughts later on when we evolve our own model. Okay. So this was another thought process wherein we started how does a person think? What makes a person think? That was important because we were addressing something to do with design thinking. So we looked at what are different types of thinking first. Convergent thinking, that is linear thinking, then divergent thinking, that is lateral, analytical thinking, wherein we compare and contrast with various precedents that have happened. Synthesis thinking, after analysis, synthesis should happen because it cannot be isolated. Once we have analyzed, we have to synthesize. Then creative thinking, wherein reinterpret what is existing. So that is what creative thinking deals about. Abstract thinking through interpretations of symbols, rhetorics, metaphors, similes, and analogies. This abstract thinking is wherein you start looking as a feeder to creative thinking. Then concrete thinking, wherein you look at the literal meanings, the evidences, facts, and from there you evolve your concrete thinking. Then critical thinking, wherein you evaluate content and look at what is more important for your work. Then of course every design studio typically has reflective thinking, because unless you work, you cannot think. You draw something and then undergo reflective thinking and generate more ideas. Unless that reflection doesn't happen, new ideas doesn't emerge out of what you have drawn. Then these three, the next two are very much required to have an social contribution, social responsibility with what we do. That is emotive thinking and evocative thinking. You need to think through emotions, as well as you have to think evoking some emotions out of the user from your work. So how can that be achieved? Then of course the nature of design studio itself is iterative thinking, so wherein you start with one and there is nothing as final. If you are not happy, go back and start again. So keep doing things iteratively, reiteratively. Then of course this last thing is very common, especially in jury, where jury comments students. I have seen every jury comes out with this particular feedback that we haven't seen out of box thinking. So what is out of box thinking? That is what we should start addressing. We took it upon ourselves to define what is out of box thinking. And all this was towards better thinking processes. Then we looked into where does thought come from? Wherein we came across a concept called as Tabula Rasa. Imagine a 1 second old baby. Does it have thought in its brain? Or where does that thought come from? So that is state of blankness was defined as Tabula Rasa by the philosopher in 18th century, 17th, 18th century, John Locke, where he said all knowledge comes from experience or perception. So baby starts learning from the environment, and that is where the knowledge comes from, and from once the knowledge is there, the thought processes emerges from that knowledge. That was his interpretation, that everyone starts from Tabula Rasa. However, he brought this particular thought as a contradiction to earlier conception of thought, wherein it was not all knowledge comes from experience or perception. there is always an innatism, innate knowledge that we are born with. That is mined with genetical information. So every species, in fact, is born with genetical information within the mind. Even reflective action, for instance. Every animal is born with that. So where does it come from? So man and nature, that nurture and nature debate was going on, and there was a reinterpretation to that debate through what is known as concept of priori. So knowledge comes from experience as well as perception and reason. This was what a priori concept was there. We'll look into more detail a little bit further and look at this first. How does information reach our brain from physical space to mental space? All information which is relevant, which we think relevant, is data. Through our sensory perception, it reaches our somatic boundary. Through somatic boundary, that is our difference between mental space and the physical space, that is our skull and brain outer layer. The information reaches wherein personal interpretation happens in the outer cognitive layer space. What cognition has happened, it goes into inner cognition, and what hasn't happened, it is left out. Okay. And at times such information is thrown out, we forget. The nature of forgetfulness is from there, that unless we cognitive factors are acting and digesting what we have received as an information, it doesn't get embedded into our brain. It would be on the surface. We might recall it after some time if we stress upon something, some particular causal reasons. And then inner cognitive space is where it retains all our knowledge in terms of memory. Then outwards information flow also happens from that memory, that inner core, to inner cognitive space, wherein our cultural interpretations through there, it would go into cognitive subjective word, and as expression it comes out. It is in this personal interpretation changeover happens from thought to expression in terms of best possible communication method. For instance, my thoughts now are getting communicated. I am choosing a language to communicate. That happens in that personal interpretation. If I were to be speaking in Kannada or Marathi or something else, again that personal interpretation is what it is filtering through that thought process while communicating with the external physical space. So coming back to concept of priori, that personal interpretation space is what is making us to gather what we see, and what it has already retained in memory, it is interpreting every time it receives an information and makes in terms of knowledge conversion. And outward also, a thought is there every time we digest, convert it into an expression through our cultural, social understanding and our communication methods. So the Tabula Rasa as well as the Cartesian principle about innatism both work together. In fact, after reading through all this, I came across a wonderful concept. I am still working on that, but this concept was already there in Indian texts, like Shruti and Smruti. I am sure whenever there is a puja, you say Shruti and Smruti. What does it mean is Shruti is something that is already there. You don't add any knowledge there. It is already there. Smruti is what you interpret through, and that we still are working as a design studio exercise. Probably I will add more information once I am able to work with students, and then something else might be added to this particular presentation. Then we looked into various logics. Fortunately, in 2013-14, I started taking architectural project. That is that equivalent subject is research in architecture. And I came across various research methodologies and research logics that are applied by scientific communities. And some of these are deductive and these are basic logics, deductive and inductive logics. And from theory and empirical evidences, how these two are interpreted across various axes. Then the model of activity flow for a researcher from theory to applying deductive logics, theorizing, then looking for empirical evidences, making measurements, sample summarization and empirical generalizations, and of course tests at various levels, and then concept formation and proposition, and finally contributing to theory in terms of new addition. So that was the scientific research process, which then was also some of the researchers further added on to that in terms of what is known as abductive logic. From deductive logic, inductive logic, which were looking at how knowledge that exists need to be looked into and how the empirical evidence need to be interpreted. The abductive logics, what it did was it innovated something. It totally brought in new ideas into how we look into the existing theory itself and how we interpret the empirical evidences. So the abductive logics as a very important tool we thought which is relevant, and then this flow for scientific, that is earlier model that was modified, and abductive logics could be applied at any stage, not necessarily like you have a flow and this is where it should be done. So abductive logics in scientific process could be applied at any stage, at any way, in terms of data gathering or in terms of interpretation or in terms of what theory has been proposed, so on. And specifically coming to construction building industry, there is another logic that is in place which is affecting, that is known as productive logic. So summarizing the four logics, deductive which predicts, inductive that evaluates, abductive it creates, and productive conceives. So this was the final model. I think this requires a little bit of patience. I will dwell upon it. This is the model which we have been working, and finally we have come to a acceptable working model which has seen good results. We experimented this model from 2014 onwards, in fact, and final this thing was made in 2018. So we have start. The basic model, that was a linear model, we kept it as it is, but we made that into stage-wise different stages, from introduction, interpretation, inception, incubation, and illustration. We looked at those earlier models where they can fit in suitably. The investigative model was very appropriate for initial deductive kind, wherein a lot of research happens. Research into either program or the site itself or the user profile. And then centralized processes were adopted for the exploratory stage, and multidimensional, multidisciplinary model was used into incubation phase, that is where the idea gets developed. So in terms of these relevant data comes into this particular stage. At the end of that, we come to stimulant idea, then we come to viable idea, and then a developed idea or validated idea. So it combines different research processes, thinking processes, as well as logics. So we have investigative phase here, then exploratory phase, multidisciplinary, and then the logics used are deductive at interpretation, inductive at inception, productive at incubation, and abductive are put in across at various stages with appropriate exercises. So we'll come back to that model again. So these were the different logics. And analogy, this whole model can be understood through this analogy. If we look at these deductive, inductive, and productive logics as three strands of DNA, which progress in a linear fashion, and an abductive logic act as a chromosome, which could be dispersed across different phases of development. And abductive logic itself provides that distinctive genes. The design comes out as a final, a unique design, unique character. Every designer comes out with a uniqueness to his or her own personality. That is itself, that is provided as a gene. That genes are what provides those uniqueness. And at times those uniqueness undergo mutation. Same as parallel, we have different styles coming through. So different styles, then over a period of time they continue, and then again a mutation happen and a new style can come through. So that's a analogical parallel. Yeah. So those various tasks that were thought of as providing that abstract thinking logic were introduced at different stages of progression of the design studio. At the commencement of the studio, the first day when the student entered, they were asked to do something abstract theme-based exercises. For instance, providing them with raw material, just 4 or 5, not 4, only just 3 colors, and providing with them a canvas, paint a abstract painting. So students enjoyed. What the objective of this particular first task was to provoke the student into creativity, creative thinking, bring them into that mode. In practice also, we see that whenever a new project comes in, you could just go for a walk, or you could go for a music. If you are interested, if you are talented, you can just spend an hour humming some tune or something on guitar or any instrument, some art form. That is what is required in this particular task. Even students also, when we explained this objective, every new design assignment, they started making this as an habit. As soon as a design assignment is given, we read, the brief is read, immediately look for some provocative art exercise. Then the second task that comes at stage 2, wherein they have discovered some stimulant idea, you could look for a plastic art. Plastic art meaning something that has got 3-dimensional composition, something to do with sculpture, origami, or simple composition with sticks. Even that would start a different thought processes. So these kind of exercises were introduced at stage 2. Then at stage 3, wherein they have reached the validation of the idea itself. From their iterations, picking a space and create an evocative interpretation. Evocative meaning something that will evoke emotions. So it could be their entrance lobby, it could be their external some space, the plaza, or it could be something to do with the inner spaces that they have contemplated. Those spaces they can evocatively present in terms of some using some of these media. It could be 3D compositions or diagramming also. And the last task was wherein you have completed your design process, you are illustrating your design. So here illustrative arts were to be used as part of their task. So provocative started at this introduction, generative at interpretation, subjunctive task at inception, and seductive task at incubation. Okay, another uphill task we faced was use of appropriate vocabulary. On day one, students would start, this is my concept. So, what is concept? That is what we started understanding. Concept is noun form of verb conceive. So, when can we call something is conceived? It is only when genetic combinations are known, that is when something is conceived. So, unless that genetics are known for that idea, we cannot call that stage as a concept. Concept will happen when there is a viable idea. Until then, it is just a notion or a thought converted into notion, that is idea received, which is unexamined, and then a stimulant idea which provides that driver for your explorations. You discover that idea is appropriate, it is viable, that is when you conceive. From there it gets into idea, validated idea, from there to developed idea to design proposal, which we call it as a parallel fetus. Now it goes as finally into, it still needs to be converted into a seed. Like the parallel, we cannot, when we say apple seed, it is an apple seed wherein all the information is there. If it gets planted, you will get an apple tree. So the GFC drawings of architect's office are that seed. Until that, you are still in a development stage. So that GFC drawing, somebody else takes it, nurtures it, and plants it, and brings it up, and that's when you can see the plant of whatever you have conceived, it has been realized. Similarly, other vocabulary also needed transformation, changed. SWOT. I was a little bit taken aback in terms of almost all schools use this word, schools of architecture. Unfortunately, this term itself is originated from business management, and that business management took term from army, because earlier times the business managers were from ex-army officers. They were used to have SWOT. I used to find it really little bit this thing, आप लोग डिज़ाइन कर रहे हैं, डिज़ाइन में threat क्या है? So we came up with what the task is known, our concerns are known, what we are doing in that task, SWOT analysis is known, but can it be better expressed? So we came up with resources, constraint, vulnerability, and potential. Case studies are antecedent studies. Unless we look at larger picture and convert that larger picture from precedent to something that will lead you to design, it doesn't. If it is going to lead you to something, then it is antecedent study. If it isn't, it is precedent. If you are looking at only one aspect, then it is a case study. Okay, so those distinctions were made, and we came with what is known as antecedent study. So similarly, number of other vocabularies are built into that manual. Okay, now we'll briefly look into the structure of that methodology manual. It has 5 stages, 7 in fact, they are subdivided, third and fourth stages are subdivided into 2. The first stage starts with the introduction, wherein we have cognitive studies, that is research, then interpretation of that research as assimilative studies, inspiration, stimulative studies, then inception, explorative studies, incubation, wherein elaborative studies are conducted, integration, perceptive studies are conducted, and illustration as exhibitive studies. Decision to proceed further into that next stage can be taken only when we have yes to that test, different test. Have we got all the relevant data, that RD, relevant data will push us to stage 2. Then stimulant idea, do we have or not? Then so on, we have those tests integrated into the entire flow methodology. What does these modules consist of? In first introduction, that is pre-design modules, we have data collection with respect to location, brief, people, codes and standards, antecedents, socio-economic, socio-cultural, and so on. Output is acquaintance. The moment we have some data, we start getting acquainted to what we are going to be doing. Then pre-design modules B, C, D, E provide you with antecedent study, that is as we know as case study, then activity study, site analysis, site strategy planning, bulk volume analysis. Output would be the strategies and concerns, or in other words, design intent, what we need to achieve. Then Ideaboard as design module, wherein Ideaboard for form making, Ideaboard for architectural character, Ideaboard interpreting a design philosophy. Test would be that stimulant idea, is it specific to location, brief, and the user? So that test is very important, wherein an idea we can say that it is appropriate to the design that we are doing. This can be approached through 2 methods, which are known as confirmatory approach or exploratory approach. Analogically, they could be gamma approach or Columbus approach. Gamma is that there was a theory that at that time India lies northeast of Cape of Good Hope. Until then, Cape of Good Hope route was known. Vasco da Gama set out with that theory and reached his goal where he wanted. Columbus also started with a theory that if Earth is round, if India lies on the east, if I travel due west, I will reach India. But he discovered something else. So both the things are acceptable in a design studio, which means I start with a theory saying that this will provide me with stimulant idea. I will reach, that is gamma. I start with theory, but while exploring, I realize something else has come out nicely. Something other than what I started with is fulfilling my requirement and design intent. Even that approach is acceptable. So you either discover while working through, or you start with a theory and reach that. So both the things are acceptable. The final output is appropriate idea inspired from the stimuli. Then the next module, once that stimulus is received or we have that stimulus, we start exploration. At times, some of the students don't reach that stimulus also. Don't receive that. Every Monday morning you don't get Eureka idea, definitely. You need to start working towards it also. So we start with exploration, wherein Columbus approach can be employed. So what do we explore? Explore in form, explorations in form and explorations in envelope. Test is appropriation of stimulant idea. At the end of this particular stage, we should be able to have that test. Is it appropriate to location? Is it appropriate to brief? Is it appropriate to the user profile? After conclusion of that stage, we move on to the next stage, that is incubating. So we have a conception of design. Now we incubate to make it into, convert that into fetus. So what we start with is design development, site development and narrative development. Then next stage would be synthesizing all the steps we have taken so far. Because it was a design studio wherein we looked at linear fashion, now lateral thinking has to happen, looking at all that we have done together. So this happens in this stage of integration, where we synthesize through retracing all the steps traveled so far. On synthesizing everything, working towards final design needs to be presented, because that expression becomes very important. When we design, we spend hours and hours, months together, but we are given maximum 10 minutes to present our design. In practice also it happens, in academics also the same model is taken up. Your jury gives you just 10 minutes to present your design. You may have been working for 6 months. So you need to have a strategy for presentation. You need to have all that you have done in last 6 months. You need to present it effectively, graphically, verbally, as well as through models. Some aspects need to be conveyed graphically. You don't waste time in verbal communication. So that strategy of presentation is dealt in this particular. Now we look at some of the illustrated modules, some graphics which are taken from the design studio, and some are for illustration purposes from published sources. When we say data, what do we gather? We gather design standards for various appurtenances, parking maneuverability, lifts and staircase, toilet planning, light, ventilation, fire safety, inclusive design aspects, data regarding site, different typologies, building typologies, and data regarding people. This whole thing addresses a comprehensive way of design. For first and second year and third year, appropriate filtering has to be done in terms of what data is relevant for them. Then in antecedent studies, similar project, minimum 5 number, 3 of them primary studies and 2 can be, any number can be in fact for secondary service, secondary study, wherein understanding the archetype module, vocabulary of expression, structure and material, services. Architects approach user feedback through secondary sources, primary sources, and tools to be used are analytical sketches and observations. This is strictly has to be done by faculty, because normally students get carried away with all the information that is gathered through published sources. So copy paste बना दिया तो ये जल्दी क्या case study खत्म हो जाता है. So if we say that it has to be sketched by hand, then naturally something will filter through their, they will start understanding. And this is for actually faculty, what should be reviewed. Organization of activity, contextual response, specificity concern, spatial module, structural integrity, adjacencies, space volume proportions, designer intent, and user adaptation. So students should try to make interpretations with respect to this, and faculty can review what students have done in terms of their understanding. Then the next stage is activity study, wherein understanding activity processes, spatial relationship, and evolved forms, shapes and size of various activities. Through understanding the critical activity, unfamiliar activity, determinant activity studies. Tools to be used are anthropometric study and facilitation study. Here, a interesting interpretation for this particular activity study was through an observation that we found in initial years when we give area program, like 30 square meter. Student comes up with first room size 6 by 5. Tables are known, they take easier way out. So we started experimenting, giving them 29.37, that kind of area program. And that also, to an extent, they started thinking, how do we shape this up? Then we came up with this particular facilitation study, which I learnt in Nagpur College, wherein we derived size and shape of the rooms or the activity from ignoring the envelope first and make an arrangement of these appurtenances that are required for efficient functioning of the rooms or the activity, and then after that put in a envelope for that. For instance, the classroom design, taking up the appurtenances that are typically there are desk, chair, and a blackboard or whiteboard or something where a wall where we face. It starts with furniture design. You'll start looking at what is the suitable furniture. Suitable furniture comes from the user profile as well as what kind of activity is getting performed. If it is a primary school, the furniture design is going to be different. If it is a studio in IIM, it is going to be different, and studio in architecture college is going to be different. So you look at the furniture design itself first. From there, derive tolerances for those spacing of different appurtenances. Tolerances also matter differently for different use patterns. In a IIM, probably the spacing is altogether different as compared to spacing that we see in 12th standard extra class. So I'm sure all of you must have, I think older batches must have attended 10th and 12th extra classes, wherein in a single bench about 20 students are sitting and sharing, just able to write one hand free. Yeah? So that kind of classrooms are also there. So you are looking at quality of that particular activity along with the furniture as well as light and other aspects that are required for that activity to be performed efficiently. Besides this, you are also looking at what is known as Prospecians. Prospecians is quality wherein it's an art of looking ahead. Now, art of looking ahead, every architect should be doing. If I am designing a classroom, how will this classroom be in 2040 or 2030? Will it be having the same blackboard and that kind of design, or will it be something like what we see at the end of the movie Martian? So wherein the interaction happens sitting around this thing and the faculty is in the center. Or the architecture studio itself can be totally different in terms of what is shown in Iron Man Part 2. So you have a laser projections and walkthrough is there. If that kind of thing happens in next 10 years, our studios are going to be totally different. Students will not be coming with sheets and models and this thing. They will be coming and projecting and taking us through a walkthrough in terms of how the space is conceived. So that Prospecians quality has to be ingrained while carrying out this particular activity study. This is another product of such activity study wherein efficiently you can create new forms. I'm sure if a hostel room is given as 21 square meter, this kind of arrangement cannot happen unless we carry out facilitation study. Simple interpretation of 6 by 5 will not give us this kind of results. So various tolerances like wheelchair movement, you understand those tolerances in this activity study. Vertically also through sections, the same thing needs to be understood. Flow diagrams, again important aspect to understand what the circulation, different types of circulation that exist, service circulation, service personnel circulation, then human movement, guest movement if it is separated, staff and guest movement to be separated, so on. Then site analysis, understanding lay of land, views within and outside, microclimate, movement pattern, potential and constraints, analysis through activity performance and patterns. Tools to be used are zoning and strategies. Review analysis with respect to relief, slope, visual, vegetation, microclimate, bulk volumes, RCVP, and various different contexts. So various contexts are in terms of physical, visual, cultural, climate, the design brief itself, and most important, time. Time in which this is getting built. That time as a context needs to be addressed. Review strategies for zoning and movement, contextual response strategy, codes and standards, climate comfort strategy, then bring about specificity concerns with respect to brief, location and user profile. Then next pre-design module is bulk volume analysis, wherein we try to understand statutory codes, design standards, spatial implications of these codes and the design standards through permissive limits, maximum and minimum. All the bylaws and codes are specifying either maximum limits or minimum limits. We try to understand them through bulk volumes study, design standards and references. References like bylaws, NBC, so on. So review buildable, non-buildable volume, review footprint, permissive heights, design volumes, spatial forms, configuration and habitable norms. This is another task that bulk volume study task that we conduct in studios. So wherein a green block is used for maximum footprint and minimum height. If maximum footprint is there, you are going to reach minimum height, and if I want to go for maximum height, I will have minimum footprint. So, sorry. The frame that is indicated is maximum footprint and maximum height together. And this is the bulk volume, meaning the area brief that we have to design. The void space that is remaining between the bulk is what the creative opportunity exists. How much of it can I scoop out is indicated by the void that is there between the bulk that is there and the framework of maximum limits. In addition to that, the flexibility of placement within the site is indicated how much, these are the setbacks, how much space is remaining, that will indicate the spread in which I can make my compositions. So after having this composition in blue and green blocks, we ask them to do abstract model without looking at any function. Only restriction here is the width of this block. Width of this block needs to be equal to 8 meters in that particular scale. Why 8 meter? That is where your limitations of light penetration. So light penetration, if I were to bring in light, natural light to all the spaces, then I have to restrict my width to 8 meters. So if I cut 8 meter, that's all, and make a composition out of it. So this is what the kind of various abstract composition the students start there, and they're actually pre-designed. Okay. So after pre-design, after having this, then we go to Ideaboard. One simple rule of Ideaboard is, 10 minutes I will be completing the first part, and then we can take break. Here, unless we have an idea on paper, it is not an idea. Many times students would come and I have an idea. Show it on paper. Sir, I want to discuss, and then I want to put it. Then it is not an idea, it is just a notion. The moment we put something on paper, that is when idea is there. Otherwise, it is not an idea. So, pencil on paper, that is what this thing is. Then looking at when that idea is there, visual expressions, spatial qualities and binding characters are needed in them, and through sketches, stimulant and stimulant spatial qualities. Tools to be used are collages, sketches and a narrative. Narrative can be graphical or verbal. Review stimulant idea, the strategies, context, specificity concern, visual patterns. Now, two graphics are there. Both are ideas. They are on paper. But one of them is refined. Why? It can be defined. Anything that can be defined is refined. So, a simple idea, if you are able to redraw it, retrace it, then it is definable. Then we can go to next stage. If it isn't, if it is still in that abstract stage, we need to work on that definition. Only then it gets towards refinement. In bulk volume, we did abstract exercise. Now what is done in this volumetric study is all the area programs are color coded. Whatever brief we have given, that has to be color coded, and from color coded you start composition. When you look at color coding, the student is not looking at abstract composition. Now because those color coding indicates certain function, student is looking at functional relation between different blue block and red block. It is not just color combination arrangement. So the functional and the thing happens together volumetrically in 3 dimensions. Student is able to appreciate the space formation that is happening within, as well as appreciate the functional relation between the two. And then looking at the thing in terms of what the shape and form semantically, what does it do, what is the expression for. Then drawing through figure grounds and looking at again the stimulant idea and strategies, and recording these explorations as adjacency diagrams, either as exploded diagrams like that, or through adjacency plans and sections. It is very simple because now you have everything in 3 dimension as a volumetric study. You just have to convert into planar form, plan or section. Then the next stage within this exploration of form is looking at structural framing of what that form is about. How that framing needs to be done to achieve that form. So it could be done through such exercises. Looking at material palette also, along with when we are doing this, material palette has to be looked into. Then the next stage is exploration in an envelope. Different explorations are done. One of them is picked up as best suitable. Then envelope exploration is carried out, wherein cohesion idea about along with the stimulant driver is looked into. The exercises can be something to do with origami. You just develop it and start making alternatives. Then look at passive strategies, the climate response passive strategies, and the exploratory stages end with making of these models. After that, the design development stage starts, wherein you start now defining much further whatever the exploratory, volumetric exploratory and the envelope explorations have given you some inclination as to what is that finalized stimulant driver. You have discovered that. Now you start defining those spaces in terms of various sizes, as well as providing micro detailing with respect to climatology, precisely calculating what projections you want, how you want it, whether it is horizontal, vertical. That explorations have given you some insight. Then articulation of facades, transition elements, and again tools to be used as models. And in site development, various strategies of movement, context, built and unbuilt, and landscape grading is looked into. Tools to be used in terms of drawings, development plan. This is different from PMC development plan. What development you are doing on the site, then grading plan, landscape plan, and a model. Then narrative development. Human being is a communicator. When he didn't have a language also, he was able to communicate graphically. It's only when we learnt languages we stopped communicating graphically. So a student who has gone through these stages should be able to make a narrative graphically. What is it that he is trying to narrate as an idea? So graphical narratives, best example is this narrative by Tadavando. So after developing, concluding of that particular stage, you synthesize all the work that you have done so far and move on to presentation. So presentation through concept, process, form and character, narratives, graphics and models. Okay, I think we can take break now, and next one is dealing with scholastic framing. After break we can.
We will have a tea break of 10 minutes and we'll join after 10 minutes. Those who want to go outside but come back again, don't go downstairs.
Students, you are not allowed to go outside. You can just sit here, drink water, chit chat for 10 minutes. The announcement is only for faculties. So all your friends who've gone out, who've gone downstairs, call them up immediately.
नेहा
Neha. Ruchna, can you please close the door and ask all the students outside to come inside?
कधी होतं त्यांना ऐकायला मिळणार. तुमचं प्रेशर असतं तुमच्या मॅटर्सचं. पण जे अटेंडन्स आज ज्यांची नाही आहे त्यांना ऐकायला मिळणार नाही आहे. अख्खे 5 वर्ष बघा सेक्युरिटी पाठवतो तुम्ही कॅम्पसमध्ये रोज लेक्चर असतं हे तरी माहिती 8:30ला. ठीक आहे सेमिनार नाही माहिती, लेक्चर होतं माहिती होतं की नाही, लेक्चर आहे हे तरी माहिती होते की नाही, कॉलेज 8:30ला असतं हे तरी माहिती होतं की नाही. मग काय झालंय आजच्या लेक्चर्सला नाही आलंय. फर्स्ट टाइम ऑडियन्स आयडी कार्ड मिळणार नाहीये, तो ते मतलब मिळणार माहिती जे नाहीये, प्लस प्रेशरचा याची कष्ट करू नका. जर झाली तर आणि ती अटेंडन्स घेऊनच पर्सनली आयडी कार्ड देणार त्याला देणार वगैरे हँडओव्हर करणार नाही, स्वतः बघून फीस बघून देणार आहे. बाकीच्यांना सांगा आणि जर यायचं असेल नंतर तर पॅरेंट्सला घेऊन यायचं आहे, त्यांच्याशी डिस्कस करून आपण
Students, ask your friends to come back as soon as possible. The guest will be arriving in next 2-3 minutes. जो भी यहाँ वहाँ गए हुए हैं, ask them to come up and be seated.
I request all of you to be silent. We are going to start in 2 minutes only. Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll start. Yeah. Welcome back. I hope everyone is refreshed. After the design methodology, we'll look at scholastic framing. This is more towards faculty planning for the design studio, what they should consider. A induction meeting of all the design studio faculty. Review feedback from the preceding academic year. Review university syllabus for the academic year along with preceding and succeeding years. So preceding and succeeding years becomes important because we need to know from where student has come in and from where to where student has to reach. Review design assignments done by the students of the academic year in previous years and review our design assignments done by the students of the academic year in the preceding years. Meaning third year students, third year past 3-4 years what design assignments have been taken, and second year students who are coming into third year, what design assignments they have dealt with. So that when we take up typology, identify typology in which the studio is going to be framed, we try to make it different from last 3-4 years. Theme-based projects, theme-based studies to be encouraged. So a theme is some examples what we had taken for third year design studio. Right from 2008 onwards, we started developing this theme-based studios. So typically third year students carry out 4 design assignments. A theme is selected on which all the assignments will be framed. So similarly, first year design faculty identifies a theme, so on up to 4th year. So at a given point of time, a student works out their own or exposed to their own themes as well as senior and junior. So in entire period of learning, 4-5 years, student is exposed to about minimum 10 different themes. Themes can be selected from any of generic ideologies, or they could be based on any of theories, as we can see in some of these examples. It could be third place, third space, genius loci, zeitgeist, so on. So many theories are there. We can frame virtually the entire studio based on one particular theory. So student working out not only focuses on that theory but also understands the other aspects also, and exposed to lot many principles involved in that particular theory. For instance, one year we had taken isms in architecture. So there number of isms are there, about 20 of them or even more also. Every master architect has come out with his own ism. So students experimented on their own liking for a particular, like for example, somebody did surrealism, or somebody experimented with minimalism, or somebody experimented with deconstructivism. So when experimenting, they start learning more and more about it because they are doing it on their own, through their own choice. So as seen earlier, design is all about choice, providing that choice. Even in learning also, if student has that choice, student makes efforts on their own. So that is what is crucial in framing of these studios. Similarly, theme-based settlement studies. What it gave us as institute, an archival base for those themes. Now, for instance, we had chosen one theme, coastal colonial cities. So, a lot of effort is put in by the students for maybe about 15 days or so, and you collect data for an unfamiliar settlement. You travel outside, stay there for 4-5 days and collect data, compile it, present it. All that data can become a base if it is archived based on a theme. Now, for instance, what this resulted in coastal colonial cities. Student did the one particular coastal colonial city, but when they went to 4th year, they started thinking, and when they had research, one of the students started looking at what differences East Coast has with West Coast. Both has got colonial cities. Now that kind of research impetus is provided the moment archival data is there with you. If it isn't, then it is anybody's choice, this thing, but students get exposed to as many as this thing if we organize these activities based on a theme. Rest of the other themes, we took this coastal colonial cities as a theme for 5 years, and after that princely states of Punjab. We started for 2 years and continued with the different hill stations later on. A design brief should contain these different headings at least. When we are making design brief, it should have a preamble, space program, site details, codal requirements, assignment objectives, submittal guidelines, time frame and assessment schedule, assessment criteria, recommended antecedents, and recommended references in terms of published papers and books. And of course, team of faculty. Then discourses. We found method of discourses as a very effective way to impart allied information parallel to the studio framing. For instance, the form and function or ideation. If you see, these run parallel to the various modules that are in progress. So stage 1 is there, wherein we take site analysis and codes and standards, that kind of discourse. And when explorations are going on, discourses on form and function, form and structure, form and expression, semantics and semiotics, those kind of discourses are scheduled. Then lateral integration, wherein this is actually something we aim for by the time student reaches 4th year. So all these aspects can be integrated for thesis work, final year thesis work. First and second year, probably whatever parallel Latin other subjects they are learning, those aspects can be used in lateral integration. So engineering services, structural engineering, environmental, which includes solar, PV, rainwater, wind and sustainability design, mechanical engineering, ACMV, elevators, escalators, pumps, treatment plants and equipments, health engineering, plumbing, drainage, gas, garbage, rainwater, electrical engineering, both low sites and high site, communication, telecom, data, CCTV, security surveillance, automation. All these engineering services need to be integrated. Then disaster mitigation. Fire safety systems, prevention, alarms, evacuation and fighting systems. Firefighting system, fire evacuation, fire alarms and fire prevention systems. Earthquake, seismic compliance of structure, emergency evacuation planning, security and access controls. Then design, when we say it is architectural design, it encompasses allied design also. It includes allied designs. Allied design fields such as landscape and environmental design, urban planning and design, interior and furniture design, illumination and acoustical design, universal and inclusive design, facade design, material science and technology application design, and design defining details. So every designer, when conceives a particular space, there is always one particular aspect which defines design. Student is asked to detail it out minimum 1:10 scale. So that kind of detailing is required. So the moment you draw that kind of detailing, you start looking at finer things, you start looking at technology, you start looking at how the construction joinery is going to happen. So all those things, that integration start happening along with design defining details. Then for 5th year, they also look at integrating the research component. Normally, research is limited only to the antecedent, site and other those aspects, or maybe at the most acoustical and technological subjects. What we ask for is something personality driven research. So individual student need to look at what is it that aspect which is unique to that particular student. After having worked on various design projects in 4 years, student must have developed a particular liking, dislikes or sensitivity. Based on that, a distinctive component of research need to be identified, and something from that distinctive component needs to be applied from form making or imparting architectural character, or has a role in societal contribution through built environment, or contribute to the student in developing unique design ideology. Of course, the mandatory research is there, wherein all the aspects based on the typology chosen, activities comprised within, user profile, macro elements of site and location, climate and contextual parameters, so that all design decisions have relevance and justification through this research. So any design decision that is taken at 5th year, it is supposed to have some kind of justification or some kind of basis for that decision. Even a simple thing like if a site has a frontage of 100 meters and a placement of gate is also a design decision. So what is the justification for that placement of gate at northern end or southern end or right in the center? The student should evolve through this research and other justifications. Then scholastic assessment, how the work produced by student needs to be assessed. Normally what used to happen was, that model still works in many colleges. A mentor is given 10 students and he overviews the progress of those 10 students. Also assess works of those 10 students only. The problem there we found was student either has the pleasure of that particular faculty or displeasure of the faculty. The moment that gets induced, there is a conflict of interest in terms of whether either prejudice or bias is there in assessment. So in order to address that issue, The objective of providing one faculty to mentor 10 students is to monitor the progress. The assessment can happen independently. So we introduced different assessment typologies, which we'll look at now, as well as criteria based assessment. So there is always objective and subjective means through which the work of student can be assessed. Both combination was evolved through these assessment criteria. So what is objective of assessment? One is to provide direction, stimulate thinking, because now reflective thinking has to happen. Student has produced some work and that has to have generate more thinking in student. Then appropriation of stimulant idea at that particular stage. Performance integrity through whatever all the faculty is practicing. They have more experience definitely from the students. So from the experience they can provide input as to performance integrity as well as structural integrity and systems integrity. Then vision or prospecians, what student has visualized for future. The guidance to meet that vision can be provided from the faculty or the mentor. Enhanced communication. Many students, when they start to work out, they are either shy or they don't have developed that language or skill of communication. So the mentor can provide that input for effective communication. And professional development, from providing that professional insight as to sharing those experiences. Then of course grading, because university demands that some marking has to be given so that they can pass, that grading has to be there. Then looking at tenets of assessment. Assessment of quality of work presented or submitted. That is a must. Irrespective of whether that student is talented or bunking class or any kind of student is there, whatever work is presented before the assessor, that needs to be assessed. Okay. So based on work alone. Then students be aware of criteria of assessment at the outset. So students should be aware in terms of what are those criteria under which I am going to be assessed. Those criteria should be known. Then it should be consistent with the stages of progress. Whatever our methodology has laid down, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, various assessment milestones are planned at the end of those stages. So it should be consistent, that entire work should be consistent with that particular stage of progress. Then parity in criteria and stages. So there are 80 students, some of colleges have 120 or 160. Earlier where we had teaching, 160 students were there. So parity between 160 students should be at least need to be, that system should address in terms of whatever systems we adopt. Then different types of assessment we looked into, that critic best suited for developmental stages, one-to-one review or peer review or comparative reviews. Then different types of assessment, that is mentor review, paid review, jury review, panel review, swapped mentor panel review, external examiner review. So these were developed, and different types of grading, that is formative assessment and summative assessment. As many as formative assessment were identified. Grading characteristic from objective assessment to subjective assessment. Objective assessment addressed recording the progress of student on the day of assessment. Whatever stage that student has reached, that objectively was recorded. Provide feedback on further development. Equivalence in marking on the progress accomplished. Whatever stage was there, it was converted into marking also. Subjective assessment, of course, O, A, B, C, D, university has given a guidelines. Based on that, either absolute marking as percentage or grade marking. Each of the objective tick mark, now this actually, I just enlarged it over here. a typical assessment sheet wherein 10 different criteria. These criteria change from stage 1 assessment to stage 7 assessment. So every assessment has got different criteria, and explanation on this of these criteria are given in the manual itself, what is meant by that. What we found was students started producing work for each of these criteria. For instance, if there is a criteria saying that design intent expressed through inspiration, there has to be some output. So what is that output? The explanation gave that output, how should be there, and proactively students started looking for how should this output be given. Should it be given as a drawing, should it be given as a model, or should it be given as a view or sketch or something. So same way, explorations in form making at site level through volumetric studies and parallel drawings, and identifying qualitative merit after the exploration, because explorations you do not as one single this thing, but as 5 different alternatives, and you outline what are the qualitative merits and demerits in each of them. And then similarly, explorations in architectural character and language, alternatives documented through parallel drawings, qualitative merit identification in architectural character and language, design intent discovered through explorations, and significance of form and ACL explored and visualized. So these were the characters, the criteria for that particular assessment, for instance. So the faculty, if the student has reached this stage, beginning, just tick marks here, whatever, from little or no evidence to beginning, developing, accomplished, and exemplary. So these tick marks then were converted into marks as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if the tick mark is on this box, 5 marks, so on. So there are 10 this thing, out of 50 this is then this is converted into either out of 80 or out of 20. So this part was objective assessment, and a grade marking like A to alphabet O to F is provided here, which gave subjective marking. Initial stages, this carried more weightage on 80 to 20 ratio. Later stages at the end, that is towards the module 8 or presentation stage, it reversed to 20/80. So both the things got developed. At formative stage, objectively students were assessed, and at later on stages, because design as a subjective interpretation, it undergoes this thing. And then to overcome that bias, personal bias, in the evaluation plan, as many assessments were scheduled as possible with different people. So SWAP mentor assessment was something to do with, I have 10 students, another faculty colleague of mine has got 10 students, I assess that faculties and he has. So bias was removed, and second, a different perspective was as an input was received by the student. Now typically when it is 1 to 10 restricted faculty and mentor this thing, whatever faculty says, patthar pe lakir, faculty ko khush karo. Or we started earlier, the response was faculty ne aise bataya, isliye hum logon ne aise kiya. Now when the intentionally through this assessment system, different faculty gave different inputs. If a student is receiving 10 different inputs, yes, confusion happens. Some students easily get carried away what to do. But now they started thinking on their own. Ultimately, get comments from 10 different faculty, but choose the best that you feel, you are convinced about. So the whole system started undergoing this change the moment this type of assessment system was evolved. Then feedback system. After having introduced all these systems, we also wanted to know whether we are doing right or not. Where are we failing and how can we improve what we have done? So a feedback system was evolved in which this was done in BNCA. We had 4 divisions, 160 students. So we had made this feedback system compulsory. All 160 students gave this feedback, at least 150, 156, whatever the strength was there. And those were analyzed overall as well as individual division wise also. So whatever we did in that particular design studio, right from settlement study, framing of the exercises, the design methodology itself, the theme, understanding of the theme, all these aspects were taken, put into that questionnaire and analyzed. Besides this, it was also a little bit of fun time for students because we asked them to give marks to the students. Students to mark the faculty. On what aspects? On communication skills, subject expertise, ability to motivate, punctuality, imbibing virtues, and overall assessment. At the same time, faculty themselves also assist, self-assessment. So, what was the gap? Faculty might be very modest, but students are very appreciative. They are giving high mark, or there is a gap other way also. At times they matched also, at times there was a difference. Faculty got a feedback as to what they have to develop in terms of connecting with the students. And the entire system got refined every year onwards. Then we come to studio administration. Studio administration is something how we make students work. One is carrot and stick method. आज सबमिशन चाहिए, यहाँ पे बैठो, यहाँ पे हिलना नहीं, इतना स्केच करके जाओ, जो भी स्केच बनेगा वो सबमिट करके जाओ. So that is one compulsion is possibility. Other is to motivate them through their thinking process, touching their sensitivities. And the moment their sensitivities are stimuli is provided, then students start working proactively. So these were certain guidelines developed that faculty should adopt, that all interactions to promote decorum of professionalism. So if we want to inculcate professionalism, the faculty themselves must be professional. Professional आज का थोड़ा सा मीनिंग थोड़ा गलत होते जा रहा है. Professional is something to do with commercial now, but not being doing justice to the fraternity as such. So the faculty who have come for this particular object of teaching, not restricted themselves to profession because they have a liking for academics. That is why they are here. They have a passion for developing next generation of professionals. So first and foremost thing, they themselves have to behave professionally through exempling, providing that example, even to the extent that how fast we lose our temper is immediately picked up by student, or how cool we are, again that also is picked up by student. Through exemplification, we can communicate best way in terms of how professional behaves. Then mentor to be empathetic to academic prospecient exploration. This is very important for faculty to understand because students are going to be practicing 30 years hence. They are in a time zone that is supposed to be futuristic. If they come up with an idea, we cannot just dismiss this is impractical. What we can do through our experience is how this can be achieved, or point point out in a specific manner a certain technology is absent today. When this gets developed, probably you will be able to work on that particular ideation which is Prospecian today. For instance, a student of mine came up, I want to build a floating house. So if floating house is required, what need to be done? If I can float a ship, I can float a house also, theoretically. So technology wise, I have started encouraging what is required. What are the principles involved? If something needs to be floated in, let's say, water, what principles are acting on it? Is it buoyancy? So pointing out these directions, then student himself understood that it is not possible today. Something more buoyant material media is required to provide that upthrust. Then can I presuppose? Yes, you can presuppose certain technology based on if that technology is already working something. And then slowly through dialogue it worked out. Student looked at something else. But the exploration done by him provided an important input to what direction technology needs to develop. Okay, so it is never a discouragement to see a student working on a Prospecian idea, even if it is impractical. Let them work. We should encourage them, not dismiss them outrightly. Then encourage, motivate and direct student to realize their ideations. So whatever ideations is there, we all are designers. Faculty themselves in practice, they are all designers. If we get this particular project, we are going to do it differently, definite. There is no doubt about it. But how we would have done, that should not be the case to dismiss a student's idea. Whatever idea student has come up with, that is what we should encourage the student to stick to that particular idea or refine it further and further through our experience and expertise. Provide constructive critical appraisals. Language of the critic shall be eloquent and exemplar of architectural fraternity. Sometimes the language used by faculty, it was noticed, it was very abusive as well as very crude also. So we intended to address that amongst the faculty itself through various meetings, that whatever we are going to be there, if we are going to provide that example, then abusive language should not be used at all. Or misuse of language also is not permissible as far as faculty is there. We should be providing with that eloquency of communication. Adopt rotation policy within as well as across the studios. This again is an important aspect, especially when we are playing with numbers. As far as possible, have these rotation policy across the divisions. I have seen in another institute, very reputed institute, wherein students were smart enough to swap work portfolio across the divisions, final work, even Viva. Unfortunately, university roll numbers got mixed up, and both the students ended up in my group. And I reviewed one work, and after some time another work came in which was exact copy of the earlier one. And when it was pointed out, how did this happen? Because none of the faculty could pick it up while during studio interaction, because they were in two different divisions. So mind you, students are smarter than us. We just have to devise methods. कहानियाँ है ना, चोर पहले जाता है बाद में पुलिस आता है, वैसे वाला. So there is always loopholes first, and then we need to address those loopholes as we develop different systems. Then learning methods. Various learning methods. Of course, we know lecture methods. Discourse methods, wherein a similar discourse like sharing of works through either PPT presentation or through dialogue is a discourse method. Collaborative learning method is very important for students to learn lot many things in quickest possible time. Settlement study is best example of collaborative method, or antecedent study, activity study. There are so many tasks that could be developed as collaborative study, groups of 4, groups of 10, groups of 30, or groups of 160 also. Then investigative learning method, research part, investigating what more can be found out about that particular aspect of concern. Explorative learning method, of course it is inbuilt into the system itself. Then experiential learning method, every space has to be represented three-dimensionally through models so that they experience the space. Even if it is to the scale model, they will experience the space. Then experimental learning method, so experiment with new ideas, whatever new materials, new methods. So that is what experimental learning methods. Evocative learning methods, evocating emotions. Application learning method, and finally culminate in project-based learning method, that is thesis. Skill set to be inculcated: graphical presentation, volumetric presentation, e-media presentation, and verbal presentations. A typical, of course, I am sure you all should be doing this as a requirement of NAC. However, this is shared with students, wherein all the activities are given, including assessment. And this is not negotiable. The schedule becomes not negotiable, because anything that we try to shift will impact something more. Okay, like anybody who is in charge of making timetable, I am sure they will know. I think some faculty might be there, no? You do. So one lecture or one faculty is not available on a particular day, entire timetable gets shifted. So it is something same, this thing. Once it is done, all the aspects are programmed, then it should become non-negotiable unless emergencies are there. Like last Monday we had unscheduled holiday. So those kind of things should be addressed. There should be a little bit of cushion to address that. Then mentor-mentee groups. Induction meeting between the faculty should have all these items. So to make it as a induction docket which can be shared with the student. So MOM of faculty, then design process methodology manual, settlement study structure manual, design brief for first assignment, evaluation plan, assessment formats, mentor-mentee groups, teaching plan and schedule of activities. So last part, bear with me. Some challenges identified for architectural education. First and foremost challenge is for knowledge perception levels. I don't know what I know, that is what I have forgotten. I know what I know, yes, something is already there. I know what I don't know, and I don't know what I don't know. So that is, if I were to put in a magnitude to this, is minuscule of knowledge I know, more than that minuscule knowledge I have forgotten, huge times I don't know the knowledge that is there in the word, and knowledge that is yet to be discovered is infinity. And the challenge is, by the time I get to know what I don't know, what I know becomes I don't know. I have forgotten that. So I have to keep remembering what I know at the same time while I am knowing more things about what I don't know. And that pace has to be maintained. That is one challenge. And this is not just with faculty, it is with all the human beings living in today's contemporary times. The number of students 80, faculty 1:10 ratio. Now parity of knowledge dissemination. This becomes one of the huge challenge. I believe you have 120 students. So a little bit more problem. Parity of evaluation in subjective field of design. So, what are the action plan strategies? Space as dedicated functional entity, are they really relevant? As a classroom, we see classroom as unidirectional thing. Can it be a different direction in terms of example I provided of Martial? Can classrooms be differently oriented? Library, as we know, can they be different? So far, library has been like reading resource material. But today, library is on everybody's palm top. Then how should library of 21st century service? How should it be? So, is it a contemplative space or is it interactive space? Or should it be a combination of contemplative as well as interactive space? What's required is flexible and interactive spaces for experiential learning, exploratory learning, experimental learning, and evocative learning. The need for evolving new tools of knowledge acquisition. Think tanks, closer groups of think tanks which can formulate discourses, colloquiums, training the trainers. Research, symposiums, conference, workshops, public interface, exhibitions and talks, archives, information acquisition, storage and retrieval, networks, collaborative learning, then systems of parity, methodology manual, evaluation, feedback as self-evolving perennial systems. More important than that is all that knowledge student can acquire it on their own online resources. There is resource tremendous that is there available which we teachers cannot teach. It is more than that. It is beyond our limits also. But what can we teach? Basic tenets of professionalism. We can teach them, inculcate these 10 tenets of professionalism. Cleanliness, punctuality, sincerity, collaboration, empathy, communication, thoughtful action, pride of work, intelligence and philosophy. This no online resource or no book can teach students. Okay, this has to be provided through one-to-one, that is human dimension comes into it, not e-media. So these are policy guidelines, generic formats so far evolved from 2009 to 2018. That's it. We end today. Thank you everyone, and if you have questions, feel free to ask. Anybody, students, faculty.
If possible, like, because there are many ideas